Hi, my friends. Welcome to another segment of You Thought It, We Said It. My name is Lisa Marie.
I'm May Denise.
And I'm Zeta.
And today we're going to be talking about this interesting topic where we're kind of diving into this idea as to whether or not when you get married, whether or not you assume the ministry of your spouse. So if I marry a person that has the calling of a pastor, when I marry that person, does that make me a pastor too? Or am I just a pastor's wife? And if I'm just a pastor's wife, then what does my role entail, ladies?
Good. Go ahead.
We really like this topic because I'm gonna start really spicy.
We expect nothing less.
We know that there is a whole slew of men and even women who believe that you're just gonna be the pastor's wife, that women can't be pastors, right?
Right.
So this is a really good topic because if your husband is already a pastor, he's already established, are you just gonna he decides to get married and is everybody calling you pastor too, right? I believe that when people get married, you become one. So I do believe that over time, that ministry should
Blend.
it should blend, and you guys should have one ministry. It should be together. Obviously one of them is gonna run it. I think a little more. It's gonna be more in the forefront. I like to see when two of them kind of have the same equal como weight in the ministry. But realistically, yo creo que a veces hay uno que Dios como que God uses more, and that doesn't mean that you're also not part of the ministry. You guys are one. So yeah, and I'm not just the pastor's wife. I will be the pastor too.
I think
That's
that
me being salty. I'm sorry, but yeah, I do believe that it becomes one.
yeah, I think that at some point, you guys can have even if, for example, if one person has the gift of prophecy and the other one doesn't mean that you can't do the ministry together, right? You have to find what it is that you're called to do and find a way to bring it together, especially in a marriage, right? Because I don't feel like God calls marriages so that one could be here and the other one could be there. I feel that he calls them so that together they can carry out his will, his perfect will. And biblically, when God gave Eve to Adam, it was because he needed that ideal helper. And so for in ministry, right, we're talking about ministry here. I think that they need to complement each other and they need to help each other. Now, if the spouse does not want to be in the ministry, then that's their decision, right? We can't force somebody to be in ministry that doesn't want to be in ministry. It has to be something that both are willing to do together, and it has to come from the heart. It's not something that you can just say, okay, they anointed you as a pastor, and maybe I'm not there yet. Maybe I don't want to be a pastor. Maybe I'm running from it. Maybe whatever the case is. So let me be, and whenever I'm ready, then that door should remain open for me because I'm still your wife or I'm still your husband or whatever the case is. But if I don't want to do that right now, then you definitely can't force me.
You're so calm and soft spoken this episode. You're behaving. I'm watching her. She's like,
I'm
yes.
evolving.
I thought so too. I thought she was really calm in the beginning. I'm like, wow, she'll get there. It'll come. No.
I'm evolving.
I where I find it to be interesting, like, fine, if I'm the pastor's wife, what happens when the role switches and I'm the pastor? Is he the pastor's husband? Like, I think that would be so much of a difficult role to swallow. Like,
For the man,
you're my
anyway.
husband. Like, like, I feel like to a certain extent, it's like I have to be okay with just being your wife. But I feel like men in the church have such a hard time with just being the compliment and not being in the limelight, like the main. You know what I mean? Like, it's almost like what we learned about Lapidor. Remember that they won't let like their wives shine, and I mean it happens on both ends. Like they won't let their husbands shine because they feel like they're the person that God called, and so I don't know. That's it's really interesting. Is is this like the only ministry that it will apply to? Like, what if you marry a worshiper, but you don't have a musical bone in your body? Like, do how do we get that to
You
blend?
can't go singing with him.
No, no.
But there's other
No.
ways that you can support him. Like, for example, my husband goes out to sing, and I don't sing, right? But I go with him. I try to give him that support by going with him to his events.
You sing. We saw that cover on Instagram. We saw you.
I missed it. I try to give him that support. I go with him, and then if he needs me to take pictures or record for him, I do that. I find a way to just help him. And then if there's other events where we can do something together, whether he'll sing, I'll help him pray, or I help him minister or something like that. That you can find a way to still be active in your spouse's ministry, even
I
if
like
that's
that.
not your strength, right? You can still find a way to support them, even if you don't like it or you don't want to do it. I think the important thing is to make them feel supported, right?
Yeah, I think, if you're going into a marriage where the ministry is already established, you can't just come onto the marriage and start expecting for you to run
Right.
stuff, right? If the person you're marrying is already a pastor, even if they call you pastor, you gotta, it takes time, and that's why I said over time you guys will blend into one ministry together. Lisa mentioned she's a worshiper, right? If I would have married somebody that can sing, I would have recorded for you. I would have, praised God from the bench, because that's not, but I think over time, God would use us in a way where we would complement each other, because ultimately the purpose is for us to work for his kingdom, right? And I think in the role of the church, I think the pastorship role is I think the one that's most, looked on, I guess, because like you were saying, does it happen with other ministries? If my husband's evangelizing and he's an evangelist, does that mean I have to be an evangelist? If a God didn't call me to be an evangelist, then no, right? But I still have to support his ministry, and I still have to be a part of his ministry, and it should be one. And I think he needs to give me that respect also, because now his ministry is not his alone. Everything that he does is going to affect me. Everywhere that he goes will affect me, and so it has to become one, even if we're like a silent partner or behind the doors. Not that silent, but you know what I'm saying? Like behind the doors, you're still part of the ministry, even though you're not the one with the microphone. And I think as for a pastor, if I know churches where the woman is the main pastor. They're both pastors, but the woman is the one who runs, the church, and really is the one in ministry. And the husband's respected. They still are called pastor, and they respect them as the pastor, but they know that she's the pastora, like she's really the one that has the calling. And men have to learn how to take on that role too, that it's not always going to be them in the limelight, and some men don't want to be pastors, right? They prefer for the wife to kind of take on all the hard work. um but to answer the question, which is, do you take on the person's ministry? And I think the answer is yes, you do. You absolutely do,
I
in
think
some way.
I think that you should, but I don't think that it's always. I don't think that's always the case. You have the case of sometimes, for example, I know a man who just took on the pastoral role, and his wife is not. Well, his wife up until this point was not serving the Lord, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so now because he's a pastor, the woman, I guess she feels obligated to like dress a certain way or
Mm-hmm.
to be present in certain functions, and I just feel like if that's not what you want to do, or if you're not ready to do that, or if that's not what like, then you shouldn't be forced into something like that.
That's
Now,
true.
do I think that maybe God does want her to do that? Yes, I
Yes.
do, because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like when God gives you a ministry, especially if you're married, it's for you to execute it together. But you can't also do it just because you feel pressure to. It has to
Mm-hmm.
really be something that is born in your heart
Yeah.
because you love God and because you want to do it this way. And you also shouldn't do it according to what people think, the way that people think you should do it, right? Because up until now, this person was dressing a certain way, or and now is dressing a different type of way to conform to the standards of whatever she's expected to be. And you're not gonna be happy doing that, because you're not doing it because it's coming from you, but because of what is expected of you. And um and I think that when you come together in with your spouse, guys have to have a mutual understanding and agreement of how you want to do things, and that's the difficult
Mm-hmm.
part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because especially when there's a ministry that's already established, especially like if a man already has his way of doing things, or if a woman, even a woman, has already her way of doing things, you have to be able to bend a little bit
Mm-hmm.
so that you guys can make this yours together, right? And so I can't expect, if I have a ministry, and I have my husband coming on, I can't expect to have him a part of it and just do it my way and my way only.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be open to his ideas. I
That's
have to
right.
be open to how he wants to do things. I have to be open to the new things, and the same thing for him. If he wants me to come on his ministry, he has to be open to what I bring to the table, and the different things that I want to do. That's the only way that's going to work.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's completely related, but I guess I have another question. We're talking a lot about marriages and when they come
Mm-hmm.
together, how those ministries look. Do you think that a ministry should change after there are kids involved?
It
Change in
has
what
to.
sense?
I understood it.
Okay.
I think
What?
it has to, regardless, in any sense. Once you bring kids into the equation, you have to, whatever, even if it's the schedule or the way, you do things, you have to adapt it so that your kids can be a part of that as well. Like, you don't force your kids to be a part of it, but there has to be a way that you do it so that your kids don't feel neglected, or so that your kids can feel a part of it, or your kids can participate in it as well. You can't just continue like when me and my husband first got married, it was, this is not ministry related, but it's an example. When we first got married, we would, come and go as we please. He would go to the gym, I would do this, I would do that, and we didn't have that issue of a kid. But once we have a kid involved, now you got to adjust your gym schedule. You got to adjust, how you come and go. You got to adjust, you got to take the baby with you. You got to make it kid friendly, and it has to change. And I think a lot of people forget that. A lot of people go into ministry, and that's another topic, right? Where people go into ministry and their ministry becomes number one in their life, when your first ministry is your home. If you can't minister to that kid that's suicidal, if you can't minister to that kid that's getting bullied at school, if you can't minister to that kid that's having peer pressure at home, how are you going to minister to this whole congregation? A lot of these pastors' kids, that's the complaint that they've had about their parents. And that's why a lot of them are rebellious. They don't want nothing to do with church, because their whole life they were neglected by parents who chose the church over them, who chose the ministry over them. And God didn't call you to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
what
what
you
I meant.
meant?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, because with the two married people are blending, do those kids also become blended to that ministry? Do they become part of that ministry too, or I don't know.
I think in that sense, I feel like the kid is not marrying. If you're saying if they come with kids already, right?
No,
Or
I'm
if we
saying
just
like
had
as
kids.
you have kids in the
Yeah.
in the marriage.
I think that it becomes a family ministry, but like Zeta said, I don't think you can force that into the kids, right? They're not the pastors, right? And I think it's almost mean to expect so much from them. They're gonna have their own ministry and their own calling at their time. Obviously, it's almost like the president's kids, right? They're upheld to a higher standard and they're in the limelight. So as children, unfortunately, they're going to be upheld to a higher standard. But they should have the free will, right, to kind of live their life. And, God gives them the free will. Now, while they're my kids, under my, obviously, authority, you expect certain things from them. But you can't impose for them, you can't impose for anyone to serve God and to do things, the way we want them to do it, unfortunately.
No, I mean, you take
I
them
would
to
like
church.
them to.
You take them to church. I feel like if it's community service, you as a parent, you have every right to force your kids to do that, because
Yeah.
that's just things that it's good for the community, right? And even as far as going to church and stuff
Ministry
like
work.
that, like I make my kids go to church with me, because it's my responsibility to teach them. Now, if when they're of age,
Yeah.
they choose that they don't want to go to church, that's their business. But I did my part in teaching them. They're never gonna know unless I teach them. And so the same thing with ministry. You can, include them as part of your ministry here and there. I don't think that the responsibility of the
Right.
ministry should be on top of them, but you can make them find ways to make them feel included and find ways to, get them active, while allowing them the independence, or the freedom to explore what it is that they feel called to do.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. That answers my question.
I mean, yeah, because you have your daughter growing up with you, right?
Yeah.
So you always want to make sure that she feels heard, make sure that she feels, loved, may feel that she feels attended to, while still handling your own responsibility as well. And try to include her as well, and which you do. I think you do a great job at that.
Thank you.
You do. So do you think that when you get married, do they take on your ministry? Yeah, I like how I said when. I mean,
You speak in marriage into my future
Yes.
life. I think that they have to. I mean, even if it's not the same ministry, I think that they have to, because at the end of the day, it's a partnership, right? We're working together, and if my, what's the Bible verse? The Bible verse is that your right hand doesn't know what your left hand does, right? Well, in this case, we're gonna say that the right hand has to know what the left hand is doing, because we gotta operate together, and we're gonna raise children together. We're gonna raise a home together.
Yeah.
So you have to be knowledgeable, even if you don't sing, you don't play instruments. You have to be knowledgeable so that you know how to support me. And I think that that's key.
I think that everybody can play a role, right? And so there's so much that goes into ministry that you don't have to be holding the microphone all the time. It can be as simple as just making sure you're behind the scenes administering, making sure that the appointments are in check, making sure that everything else is taken care of, so that you can do what you got to do. And if you know that you're good at something, do it with all your heart. You can find a way to implement that into this marriage, into this union, so that everything runs smoothly. Everybody has a role, and everybody should play that role and play that position.
and I think to be the escudero, to be there to pray over the ministry and to be able to pray over, your spouse's calling, right? And they get attacked a lot when you're doing the work of God. And if obviously I can't sing, then my job is to at least pray over you and make sure that
Tú
I'm
cantas,
protecting you in
amiga.
prayer.
Yo
I
te he
sing.
visto.
I love to sing. Y'all hear me sing one day because I love to sing. I'm just not good at it. But I think it's important to pray over the marriage, and at minimum, you should know how to pray over. You should be. I mean, that's without a doubt. Like you have to be able to pray for
Yeah.
your spouse's ministry.
Yeah. And if you don't, I just don't think that God gives, two polar opposites people a ministry where they can't somehow make it blend. I
Exactly.
don't agree. Like if, all the gifts in the Bible, you can somehow use them to work, with
Together,
the other
hand in
ones.
hand.
It's just, that's just the way that works. If you preach, if one preaches and the other one evangelizes, there's a way to do that together. One prophesies and the other one prays, there's a way to do that together. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't have to have the same exact gift or calling for us to do it together. Like I can have my own platform, you can have your own platform, but when we get together, there has to be an explosion. Like people have to, and I think that people. That's why it's important to know these things before you get into a marriage, right? Before you get into a marriage. But if you don't and it happens afterwards, then amen. You just have to find a way to make it work together. At the end of the day, we're playing for the same team. You know what I'm
And it
saying?
doesn't happen overnight. It takes time.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Dale.
We like questions.
Pregúntanos.
Where does love come in?
Hmm?
Where does love
At the
come
beginning.
in? What
I'm
if,
like in the beginning before they got married. No.
right? I'm getting to know you. I love you. Is the love that I have for you going to surmount what I know about your calling? Like, do I set that aside? Do I ignore? And I think, in theory, we could call it the red flag of like,
You mean
like I know what I know about your calling or lack thereof, right? Or that maybe you don't know what your calling is, or maybe you're not living in your calling, but I love you anyways. Do we ignore that and love you anyways, then move forward into a marriage?
I don't think so.
Talk about it.
I think you gotta get that squared away because when somebody's already established in ministry, that's the essence of who they are. That's you literally saying you're not sure about who they are. Because when somebody has a ministry, you don't separate the ministry from the person. Like I'm not a servant of God only when I'm on the altar. I'm a servant of God in my house. I'm a servant of God in school. I'm a servant of God in church. I'm a servant of God when I go shopping, when I go to Dunkin', when I go to the beach, when I go to the pool. I'm still a servant of God. And so if I have to minister to somebody at the beach, at the pool, at Dunkin', at school, I'm going to do that because that's the essence of who I am. So if
But
you're not sure about
there you
that
go.
person's calling,
What if they aren't sure of their calling?
what do you mean?
The person you
What if
marry
I don't
doesn't
know what I'm called to do? I just don't know. I feel like God hasn't told me.
Well, if you're not sure about that, then that's different because, like I said, I feel like any of the ministries can work together to any of the ministries. It's not
But
like
but you don't know. They don't know their ministry, neither do you. So, are you just not a candidate? I can't love you, or can I love you
no,
anyways?
no. I think you can figure it out together as long as you know that there's a ministry somewhere in there.
God has called everybody for a purpose, I think. So I think everybody has a purpose. But most importantly, if you feel like you don't have a ministry or whatever the case is, your ministry could be serving, right?
Right.
And if that's your ministry, that's your ministry.
Serve
I
your
think
spouse.
that most importantly is, does that person love Christ? Is that person in it with their whole heart, right? Because I think that as long as they're willing to do whatever God calls them to do, and they're willing to, when God tells them what their purpose is,
Right.
to do it, then it's fine that they're unsure. But now if it's somebody who's like, that ain't for me, that's not,
That they don't want to be in ministry.
they don't want to be in ministry, they
That's a
don't
red
want,
flag.
they don't want to, and they don't love God with all their heart, then, they don't have to be established. They don't have to have a ministry when you marry them, but they have to love God and they have to put God first and everything. And if it's somebody who's just going to church to play church, or because it's the right thing to do, or because, I ain't trying to go to hell, but, I ain't trying to
Live for Christ either.
Yeah.
So, do you wait for that calling to be established, or do you get married with the confusion?
I don't think the person has to have a ministry when you get married. Like, it's okay if you have a ministry and the other person doesn't.
No, I agree. I
Your
agree.
face.
Yeah, because I don't think that they have to, like, you don't have to have a confirmation of a ministry in order to get married, but you do have to love God. Like you said, you do have to know that we're gonna go somewhere with this. Some people, they're like, I don't know what I'm called to do, but it's really because they don't want to do nothing. And
And
that's a red flag because you got to do something. I don't believe in Christians to just be sitting their butts down for 25 years inside the church trying to figure it out. You can't do
it
that.
is
You
very
you
comfortable.
lazy. You need to get it together. You need intervention. You need to work for the body of Christ.
Yeah.
Like I don't believe in people just not doing nothing. And so when you have people like that inside the church that feel like I don't have a calling or I don't have a ministry, no, you're being lazy about it. You're not being proactive about it, and you just don't want to work for the kingdom, and that's a problem.
And are they, even though they're unsure about their ministry, are they supporting your ministry? Are they back in your ministry, or are they too comfortable in the, looking for ways to kind of get you to sit also, and
Exactly.
share into my bench with me, right? Then they're being used by the devil.
Because there's people that don't want you to eat, but and they don't want to eat, but they don't want you to eat either, and that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want to work for the kingdom, that's fine, but you gotta let me do me, and you gotta let me be great. Siri
Is
wants
that
to
you?
join in the
No, Siri.
conversation.
I was like, what happened? She was talking about Ed Sherman.
Do you think that these people who become part of someone else's ministry, for example, instead of a pastor and his wife, or a pastor and her husband, do you think that the wife or the husband are actually happy in the ministry and in their marriages?
So the ones that I've seen, because the wife is more in the forefront, doesn't mean that the husband is not in the ministry either. What I've seen is that the husband is also called pastor. He also ministers. He deals with, let's say, the majority of the issues with the husbands or with the mans in the church, but they're still part of the ministry. So because they're part of it, they don't look miserable to me. I think that I would see a lot more misery out of a pastor's wife. Like the ones that are just silent and are expected to live, prim and proper, while the husband is in charge of everything and she's just the pastor's wife. I think that those people seem a lot unhappier.
Yeah,
The
I
ones,
think I've seen that too.
yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Because women
No
always
tiene
have
voz.
something to say.
I'm being silent.
I said it in, I said no tiene voz, and you said we always have something to say.
They always
Yeah.
want to say something. Yeah.
It's that we're active. God didn't call us to be quiet. He didn't call us to just be candy arm or.
And honestly, even if the woman is the one that's active, she relies a lot on the silent man to help her. That's the
Yeah, we
reality.
want that
Like the man
support.
is quiet, but he's very active in the sense that he helps the woman morally, spiritually, financially, whatever the case is, physically moving things around. Like men, even though they don't make a lot of decisions, from what I've seen, they're there. They're active. They're active.
Men are active, and we do. I feel like I run everything by my husband, though I still do what I want to do, but I tend to go and be like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? A or B, right? And so it kind of helps me get my thoughts in order. It's like that famous thing where the women ask the men, what should I wear? And he tells you, wear this one, so she'll wear the other one.
Yeah, exactly. I do. The same thing. But how do you feel, Lisa? Do you feel like you would take on a
Oh,
spouse?
boy.
No, porque ya tú preguntaste mucho.
Yeah, let's change this
Would
around
you
a little
take on
bit.
a partner that wasn't willing to either A, minister with you, or B, accept your ministry?
No, I wouldn't, because if there's anything I've learned today, no, it's not, or in my life, no shade. So no, I would not. I would not, because I wouldn't, because I want to see my family worship God. The Bible verse says, "Joy mi casa," me and my house, we're gonna serve the Lord. So whether it's serving with me and what I want to do, or if it's, I have to turn around and serve Elena, whatever her ministry turns out to be, we're gonna serve one another, but we're all gonna be serving the Lord together. Like there's just no space for to be sitting down. If you want to sit down, go sit down in your mother's house. Don't sit down in mine. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't have time to waste. Like there's just so much going on. We're entering a new year, 2023. Like, there's just so much like happening and going on in this world. There's no place for people to be nonchalant, sitting down and doing absolutely nothing. Like, pick a side, but do something. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So no, to answer your question, I would not. So sorry if you're in my DMs and you're not trying to work for Jesus. Don't talk to me.
Go sit down.
In your mother's house.
You guys heard that? Y'all better be praying, looking for your calling, or
This is
looking for
good.
ways to support her.
Right. So there goes. There you have your answer, right?
Yep. Should I think, the biggest thing that we see is, wives not knowing if they're gonna pastor with their husbands, right? Obviously we believe in the calling over the wife as well. We don't believe that it's only over a man. We know women who are pastors and who are successful. It's not unbiblical. We've seen all right, we're not gonna get into that. and
Another day,
topic.
another day.
yeah, that's another topic. I just, I've had that debate so much, and it actually gets me angry. I think at some point, because I'm just like,
It's
oh,
tiring.
yeah,
I have another question.
yeah.
So, in your experience, you've now been married.
Hmm.
You with an evangelist. You with a Christian artist. Shout out to you, Geraldo. Hey, would you change anything? Would you change anything in the ministries that you ladies stepped into? Like, if you had to choose again, would you choose a Christian artist? Would you choose an evangelist?
For me, I don't think that I don't really think that his ministry has affected me like negatively. I think it's just, maintaining our
Has it
eyes.
affected your marriage?
Not the ministry in itself. I think in the beginning it was a little bit of like you have to be like this or you have to do that because people are looking at you because you're Geraldo's wife and people are looking at you because you're and it's like in the beginning it's a little like
Annoying.
because I hear that because I not because I thought it myself but because people were putting that into my head. Um, that's the only thing that I would have changed from the beginning. From the beginning,
You
I
heard
should
her
have
voice.
Now we see the hyper zeta.
I should have came in like guns blazing. Like I don't care what you think about me. But other than that, like I once I grew into myself and I just accepted myself for who I was and stopped really caring about the comments. I think that it hasn't really affected me. My husband's he's supportive of me and if I can help him I do and that's pretty much what it is. Like I don't I try to support him. That's his passion, that's what he loves to do, and I try to support him in that. And he does the same for me. Like if I want to do something, and I've tried a million projects and he'll be like yeah I'm there to help you.
That's
I love
beautiful.
that.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, me. I wouldn't change anything. I think that my husband's ministry is growing, and I support him. He and I have, and this is why I was saying that you blend into it because he and I have different styles, so we have to learn
Uh-huh.
to blend and become one style at some point, and we're going through those motions, right? Um, we're a little different, but I support his ministry, and I love when God uses him, and I love to see him walk into his purpose, and I'm sure that he likes it also from me. So I think that it's just a matter of when both worlds collide, right? And working into the purpose. And I know God has told us He's called us as a ministry, as different stuff.
Mhm.
And so it's gonna happen. It's gonna come to it, but I don't expect it to happen overnight either. So
I think in the beginning there was a little bit of pressure. Like people expected me to be like him or to do things like him or to walk like him or talk like him. And then it's like I have my own way of being. So I had to like, just shake that off of people. Like I'm not him. I don't do what he does.
yeah.
I'm not, like he does it this way and I do it this way. And once you, like I said, once you start growing into yourself and cause he was doing this a lot longer
Before,
than
yeah.
before I came in the picture. So once you start growing into yourself and you know who you are and what you're doing, all of that doesn't really affect you. What about you, Lisa? What would you have changed?
I'm not married.
That's why she said would have.
Would
Ooh,
have, you
bring
see?
it back.
All right, what would I
Everything,
have
no, I'm just kidding.
changed? The whole experience.
Okay,
You
we'll take it.
my ex-husband was a worshiper.
He was.
He was a worshiper. I think that he, with more intimacy and more seeking búsqueda, I think that God definitely could have taken him to another level. I
I
think
agree.
that, but there's always that part. Like, do you want it? Like, are you willing to work for it? Are you willing to let certain things go? Are you willing to silence certain bugs and certain voices in your head that want to, you know, shift your thinking, right? Because sometimes I feel like there's just so many new age thinking and people want to overanalyze and over
Right.
spiritualize everything and yes and no and people, like, I feel like if you're not grounded on who you are as a Christian, is gonna sway you, because although this is what you feel or this is what you believe, you have people in your ear telling you no, but don't do it that way, or no, don't do it this way, or that that's not real, or that's over spiritualized. But you have to have your own identity. And it's okay to be open minded. You can listen to people, right? Because you have to validate. Listening to people is the only way you're going to have an impact on them. It's the only way that it's going to open the conversation so that either you can learn or you can teach. But, going back to him specifically, I just think that maybe if he would have sought more, he would have, I mean, I believe wholeheartedly that, he would have had a ministry that we could have blended together. He supported my ministry. And but I hope that whatever Jesus brings next, this is way greater. Amen. So,
And
yeah.
It will be. It will be. All right.
Very
So
good.
that was good, right? So to answer the question, right? What was the question?
When you marry a person, do you assume their ministry?
Do
does
you
it
assume
become
their
yours?
ministry?
Yeah.
They become a part of it. Do you take that on?
And the answer is it's really up to you and God.
Yeah.
It's really up to
And
you.
your marriage dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
how do you guys work together? How do you get along?
But you should 100% support it.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
You cannot be the devil in disguise.
Yes, absolutely.
So
So-
this concludes,
yeah.
right? This concludes our, which episode is this? Number 3? Number
Another
4?
one of 2023. Welcome and thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye.